What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Closing the Deal. I am your host, Sam Enright, and sitting across from me is my co-host, Zach Dixon. Zach, what's going on, brother? How are you today?
I am great. Not nothing new to report this morning.
Nothing new, huh? Same old, same old.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much every single day. It's just a
Hey,
new day. Get after it. You know what I mean?
you know what they say? They say it be like that sometimes. So, you know what I mean?
It do be like that sometimes.
Sometimes in life, we just got the same stuff going on all the time. So,
Especially in the wintertime here in Ohio. I feel like just, it's tough to get outside. We did have a day the other day where it was like 60 degrees. No, the sun did come out in the afternoon time, but I don't know. In the wintertime, it's just sometimes just going through the motions.
yeah, it's a bit redundant. There's just, there's not a whole lot of different things going on, like you said. So, we live near a lake. We live near a lot of golf courses. We live near a lot of, I
Summer
guess,
activities.
yeah, summer activities, basically, but not a lot of things to do in the winter. I mean, we got some golf simulators and we have, bowling alleys and those sort of things. Those are kind of things I think that I do in the winter, but, you know, not always typically things you do on the weekend time. So,
People keep telling me that I need to get into these winter sports, skiing, snowboarding. I don't know. I keep going back and forth with it. 10 years ago, I would have said absolutely not, zero chance. But the more and more I live in Ohio in the wintertime, it's like, I feel like I kind of need to take up a winter sport of some sort, just something to get me outside a little bit. But if you know me personally, I can't stay in the cold. I hate it. I actively try to avoid going outside in the wintertime because I'm not built for it, unfortunately. Not built for it at all.
yeah, it's all right. It's not that bad, but I
It's all a
mean,
mindset.
yeah, I mean, for you, it's kind of surprising. I mean, I know you hate the cold, but you've lived in Ohio your whole life, so you would think at some point you would grow used to the fact that this is going to happen, every year. Or on the flip side, move away from it if it bothered. You know what I'm saying? If it was like I cannot stand it, so
I
always
was yeah.
go go
I
ahead.
was I was one of those kids that was wearing shorts in the middle of December and January, like every trip. I never had a pair of pants on in the wintertime as a kid, and now I'm truly the exact opposite. Like it's foul to think about people walking outside of their house in January and February in shorts, letting their skin fly. I got gloves. I've been talking about getting a ski mask lately, like just for the 10-second walk to from my house to my car, from the car to the office, like that. I'm thinking about getting a
Yeah,
ski mask so I
yeah,
have no skin exposed.
that's a little over the top. I'm gonna be honest with you. That's too far. Oh man, that's too far.
But I
But
got my
hey,
gloves. I got my winter coat always. Sometimes I rock the double socks. Like it's just gotta do what you gotta do.
hearing a lot of information that I haven't heard before. That's starting to make me question some things. That's for sure. So double socks. That's funny stuff. Well, I mean, you do what you got to do in the cold. I mean, it's definitely not my favorite. That's for sure. I mean, I'd rather it be like 95 and I'd be sweating as soon as I walk outside. But it is what it is. The cold is. I mean, been 28 years now, so at this point, I've just grown accustomed to the fact that it's going to keep coming around until I decide to either move or leave this earth, one of the two. So
For
I'll
sure.
be. It is what it is. But yeah, I mean, winter sports. My fiance wants me to get into snowboarding as well. So, or snowboarding, skiing, something like that, which, I'm not very coordinated with my feet. I don't do soccer, skateboarding, like really anything like that. So I don't know how bad that could go, but I can imagine not well at all. So
Yeah, it doesn't look hard, or it doesn't look easy by any stretch. And everybody says that skiing is easier than snowboarding, but that just doesn't make any sense to me because I feel like with snowboarding you have a flat base, like you're not moving. You know what I mean? With skis, you can kind of those are a
well,
little bit more navigable.
I think it's the difference between both feet being locked into the same position. You know what I mean? Like not
Hmm.
moving separately. Like if you wanted to spread your legs, you're not spreading them. Whereas on a ski, you can move your feet freely. You can move with the left foot where you want it and the right foot where you want it. But I mean, that to me seems like it opens the door to like, the splits or something ungodly happening, that should not be happening to a man. That's what I think.
A
But
torn groin, torn
yeah,
hamstring, something along those
just
lines.
nothing great. But snowboarding, I feel like having both feet in this locked in the same position and not being able to move them freely, I can see why that would probably be why they say it would be harder. But
Yeah, definitely. What we got on the docket today, Sam?
today we have real estate myths debunked. This was an episode that we thought was a good one to do for you guys because there are still, even to this day, even with the age of the internet and Google the way that it is, there is still these myths out here when you could easily just ask the question and figure it out. But, not to roast on anybody, but again, just saying, it's crazy to me that we still live, we live in the day and age where you can basically find all this information and, it's still widely believed that some of these myths are indeed true. So, we're going to break some of those down for you guys today and hopefully provide just a little bit of insight from, the other side of the field that knows that these things are not true and hopefully help debunk some of these for you.
Absolutely. And they are things that we hear from clients ourselves too. It's not even necessarily just, generally speaking myths. It's things that we have heard from our clients as well. So legit firsthand sources for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, we'll get started with it. So I know you guys have probably heard me talk about this one already, but needing 20% down for a loan. This one is still around to this day. People still think they have to come up with 20% in order to purchase a home. And today we're hopefully going to debunk that. So I did a little bit of research into this because I'm kind of a history nerd in that way. Like I do like history, but I also wanted to just kind of provide you guys a little insight as to where this stuff comes from. So in the 1950s, when banks were lending out against properties and people would default on those and go into foreclosure, the bank in turn, because banks do not like to hold on to real estate, they wanted to quickly flip that property and get it out of their hands. And so what they did was sometimes they would offer up to a 20% discount on that home's purchase price in order to sell that property, move it quickly, get it into somebody else's hands so that it was no longer on their books. Now, with that, what they started to do was, in order to cover themselves, they started to charge borrowers 20% down payment so that if they ended up defaulting on the property, they would already have had that 20% from the buyer, and then they could sell it for that 20% discount and make out with their same amount of money and no longer take that loss that they were taking. So that's kind of where everything originated from, was back in the 1950s. That's how the banks operated. Now, sometime after that, private mortgage insurance became a thing. And what that allowed the banks to do was that if you put down less than 20%, then they required you to carry a private mortgage insurance policy on that property that would protect their interest should you default and go into foreclosure on that property. And so, obviously that's why the 20% rule is still around to this day, is because that's still the key number to getting no mortgage insurance on your property is 20%. So anytime you put less than 20% down on your property, you're going to have private mortgage insurance. And obviously the less that the less that you put down, the more the private mortgage insurance is going to cost you. And again, this is a coverage for the bank specifically. This is not an insurance for you. You are paying essentially the bank to protect them from yourself. So that is, kind of essentially the thought process behind it. But again, that is where the 20% originated from. I thought that was just a cool little fact because, again, I like history and I didn't really ever know why, everybody always thought it was 20%. I thought it was just because of the mortgage insurance, but it's actually because the banks used to sell properties for about 20% discount to move them off their books. So, and why is this myth still around to this day? Now, I just touched on that a little bit. Obviously, it's because in order to get away from mortgage insurance, you still have to put 20% down. I actually did a little bit of research on this, and there was a survey done on Lending Tree back in 2023. And out of 2,000 people that they surveyed, 31% of those people still believe to this day that 20% down was required for their down payment, which I just found kind of astounding because, again, 2023, we live in a time where information is readily accessible. So it's crazy that people still believe that. So now in that same survey, they surveyed and found out that 59% of people bought their home with less than 20% down. So obviously that goes to show you that that is not a common thing in today's world. Most people are not putting 20% down in order to purchase their homes. And so there are a lot of different options out there for you. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to kind of dive into that a little bit for you guys. So conventional, the loan that you guys, the one that we're talking about, 20% down, that if you put 20% down, you avoid PMI. They actually will allow as low as 3% down for first-time home buyers. And a first-time home buyer in the mortgage business is anybody who hasn't owned a home in the last 3 years. It does not mean that you've never owned a home in your life. So that's kind of a cool little caveat. Obviously, is if you haven't purchased anything or haven't owned a home in the last 3 years, you can still qualify for that first-time home buyer 3% down. If you obviously have owned a home in the last 3 years, your minimum down payment for conventional is 5%. FHA requires 3.5% down minimum, and USDA and VA both offer as low as 0% down for anybody who can qualify for their loan. So as you can see, we go as low as 3% down, as high as, obviously you can go as high as you want, but 20% down. So 3 to 20%, is kind of, we see a lot more people in that 3 to 5% range than we do at 10, 15, 20%. So it's very common in today's world to buy a home with less than 20% down. And there's even down payment assistance programs out there where you could have part of your down payment helped out with by certain agencies. Like here in Ohio, we have the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. They're backed through U.S. Bank, and they do down payment assistance programs of anywhere between 2.5% to 5%. So that's one nice thing that we have used in the past as well. If you do need help with your down payment, there are different options out there for you. So I just thought that was cool. Wanted to talk about that. Wanted to hopefully put that to rest for some of you that are listening. That 20% down is indeed not required to purchase a home. You can get in for a lot less in most circumstances. Now, obviously, if you want to put 20% down, you're more than welcome. But, Zach's touched on a previous episode, sometimes people, have saved money and they put themselves in a position to buy a home. But because they believe, if they're a part of that 31% that believe that they still need 20%, they could, be still waiting another year, 2 years to save that money. That's not necessary in order to purchase. So that's real estate myth number one, hopefully debunked for you guys.
Great info for sure. And obviously, I think one thing that leads, I think personally, I think another thing that leads to that opinion or that myth is when people get on Zillow.com or Realtor.com, that is the default down payment. When you look at that monthly mortgage payment that they give you there, is 20%. So I think when people get on there and see that number, they are automatically led to believe that, they need 20% down to purchase a home. And then additionally, I think as well, when you think about the decision between putting, maybe 3 or 5% down versus 20% down, it's always good to look at the difference in those numbers versus what you're going to be paying in PMI to get to that 20% number each month. So if it makes sense to, take on another $40 in PMI, if you're going to get to that 20% number in 3 or 4 years, you might be able to save a little bit of money by just doing that PMI instead of, putting a down payment down a little bbit higher. So always about looking at the numbers and seeing what maybe makes sense for you personally in your own situation. That's the goal, obviously, is everybody's got a specific situation and not everything is a cookie cutter, one size fits all. So
Absolutely. That's the truth. So obviously plenty of options out there. So if you guys have been in the market considering, buying a home and you have limited funds or you have saved up a decent amount, but it's not quite that 10, 20% that you have believed it needs to be, reach out to a lender, reach out to somebody, have a conversation, let them know where you're at with funds. And, most of the time, most lenders are going to be able to work with that for you. So
Definitely. So moving on to my first myth here. I actually literally just heard it from a client about 10 days ago. And he was wondering, the myth is the best time to buy is in the springtime. And he was wondering, should I wait to buy until the springtime or should I try to tackle it right now? And I think personally that any time of the year is the best time of the year to buy, depending on your own personal situation, like I mentioned previously. Just all in all, some facts for you guys. May and June tend to have the highest sold prices of any months of the year. And according to Redfin, prices actually peak in June of each year. And that makes sense for me personally, because when I think about, home buyers and sellers and people wanting to move, especially here in Central Ohio, people generally don't want to move in the wintertime when it's 10, 20, 30 degrees out, snow on the ground. People don't want to up their entire lives to move to a different place when that's going on. And I think that is also kind of vice versa for other areas of the country. I would say, generally speaking, probably completely flipped for people in Florida. I'd say their, hot times are probably in that December, January, February time period. And people are probably not trying to move in May, June, July in Florida just due to the extreme heat. That likely isn't something that's very applicable or, helpful when moving. So, um, all in all, competition is going to be way tougher in the springtime as many people want to start to start to move in that time period into the spring and summer. People with families, I see a lot of movement in the June and July area, just getting ready for the new school year, getting into a new school system for that new school year. So, there's a lot of competition when you move into that springtime and that summertime, and that is I shouldn't say non-existent, but there is a lot less competition in the wintertime for buyers. And so, according to Realtor.com, homes sold in the springtime sell faster. And so, that obviously leads to less negotiation and bidding wars. So, obviously, if you're bidding against other buyers at that point, you're going to be running that price up a little bit more, giving up some concessions that you maybe weren't looking to do when buying your home. So, when you're going against other buyers and having bidding wars, you're just going to be all in all paying more, giving up more than compared to what you would do maybe if there was a lot less competition. As I touched on already, generally speaking, people don't want to move in the wintertime, and that's why there is just less listings and less buyers as a whole, and so leads into less competition as a whole as well. I actually had a sale happen this wintertime, and the negotiation would have been night and day compared to if we would have went into contract in the summertime in June. We were able to negotiate, almost 3.5% of closing costs covered by the seller. In this situation, I have zero faith that would have happened in the summertime. I think that we would have been facing other people with multiple offers and, driving that price up, driving up concessions. And so the fact that we went into contract in December versus June is a big factor in the fact that we were able to negotiate so much closing costs. So all in all, just to debunk this myth as a whole, the best time to buy is not dictated by season. It is dictated by your own personal situation. When you're able to find a home that fits your needs and fits your price point, whether that's in December, whether that's in June, it does not matter. So best time to buy is not dictated by season. It is dictated by your specific situation. So want to debunk that. Like I said, had heard that literally from a client in the last 10 days. And I told him that exact thing is you're going to be facing a lot more competition in the springtime than what you are right now. So be prepared for that, or, be prepared for higher prices and bidding wars and things of that nature if you want to wait a little bit. So hopefully that information debunks that myth. And what else we got on the docket here, Sam?
I love it. Yeah. Myth number 3. So a pre-qualification is the same as a pre-approval. Obviously, both of these are going to be a review of your finances. So typically what the key differences between a pre-qualification and pre-approval are going to be. In a pre-qualification, most normal times, we are going to review just your verbal income that you put in there, and we're going to take everything at face value of what it is that you imported onto your application. We're going to take a look over everything, see maybe what loan programs might make sense. It's just going to be kind of a general overview of your situation. A pre-approval, on the other hand, is going to be a deeper dive into your total loan file. So you're going to see that we would pull income documents. We would typically do a soft pull or a hard pull on credit. We would do, sometimes review banking, just depending on what's going on. And in that sense, you're typically going to have the loan run through a pre-underwriting process. So again, it's going to be a much deeper dive, making sure that the income checks out, because, sometimes, with certain clients, income can come across differently. We take gross income, and sometimes clients will just put their net income in, or they'll miscalculate their income based on how the certain loan programs, review and calculate income. And so, it's important for us to go ahead and get in there. And when we're going through your pre-approval process, taking a look at the pay stubs, taking a look at the W-2s, making sure the income that we are using is being calculated properly, and it's the way that the underwriter would calculate it once that time for you to go in a contract is. So again, it's just going to be a much deeper dive than a pre-qual. A pre-qual is going to be, just kind of a general overview of what your situation looks like, kind of giving you a baseline idea of what it is that you could potentially afford or be a pre-approved for. And, that, I guess, maybe I would recommend if you're at the very beginning of your pre-approval or at the very beginning of your home buying journey, and you're just, hey, I'm not looking to buy for 6 to 12 months. I just really want to know where I stand right now and what kind of information you would recommend, or things you would recommend me do in this time period while I wait this 6 to 12 months. That would be the perfect situation, I believe, for like a pre-qualification. And the reason for that is because a pre-qualification is not going to carry very much weight with a seller. If you show up and you want to put an offer in on a house with a pre-qualification report, or with a pre-qualification, it's 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 not going to do very much for them, because again, it's just a general overview. It does at least show that you maybe have had a conversation with the lender, but it does not mean that all of these things have been checked out and been looked into. And so a pre-approval is going to carry much more weight. So again, situation, maybe if you're 6 to 12 months out, a pre-qual makes more sense for you. If you're looking to buy now, a pre-approval is always going to make more sense, especially if you're wanting to try to get out and put offers in on properties right away. Having that lender do a deep dive, making sure that everything checks out, making sure everything on your credit looks good, with your income looks good, those sort of things are going to be imperative. And it's going to carry a lot more weight with your seller when you do go to put an offer. They're going to feel a lot more confident with that letter than they would with a pre-qual. So again, just want to put a caveat in there that we kind of, I think we talked about this on a previous episode, but, a pre-approval and a pre-qualification, again, there's a key, little part of that again, it does not mean that as soon as you get in a contract, if you have a pre-approval, that you're going to get funding immediately. There is still an appraisal that has to be ordered. There's still title work that has to be ordered. We still have to have your loan completely underwritten, those sort of things. And so a pre-approval is just again, it's a general deep dive into your file to make sure everything checks out. We try to do as much due diligence up front, but that does not always mean that everything is, covered by the time you get into contract. So just want to put that in there. But I was able to look up at least one stat for you guys I wanted to share. According to an article from Yahoo Finance in 2022, 86% majority of home sellers prefer a buyer who has been fully pre-approved. So that is a whopping number right there, guys. That is huge. So again, make sure you're getting pre-approved. I think a pre-qual has its place. Again, if you are somebody who is just generally curious about where your situation currently is and what things you can do to improve that, maybe a pre-qual makes more sense for you so that you're not doing hard inquiries and those sort of things. But a pre-approval, again, if you're looking to move in on a home here within the next month or two, that would make more sense for you to make sure that what you're offering on and what budget you're looking for in your home is something you can actually afford.
Great info for sure, because I've had, clients get the prequal and like you said, sellers will laugh at you, honestly, if you if you submit an offer with just a prequal. It doesn't hold very much weight, like you mentioned. So great info for sure. And always suggest, before getting that home buying process started, do one of the other. But if like you mentioned, getting in there a little bit quicker, do the pre-approval process. It'll save you some time and headache down the road a little bit.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. It's going to save everybody, and you'll be glad you did it, obviously, because, we've had clients that experience a little bit of heartbreak, when it comes to, what they've been looking at online versus what they can afford. Sometimes it's a little bit of a gut punch because you feel like you should be higher, but Again, Zach talked about it on previous episodes, but the Zillow, Realtor.com, actually, we talked about at the beginning of this 20%. When you get on those websites and you're seeing these payments, please always keep in mind that is with 20% down. And if you do not have 20% down, that payment is going to vary drastically. So, we've had people that get on and they look at $300,000, $400,000 houses, and the payments are that of what a $250,000 house would be, at a 3 to 5% down. But on this, $400,000 house, you're putting 20% down. So it drastically changes what that payment's going to look like. So, don't fall in love with that. Make sure you call your lender, talk with them, make sure you're getting proper numbers before you go out looking for homes. It's going to save you time and save you headache. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So moving on to my second myth here, it is going to be you should always overprice your home to leave room for negotiation. And this is something that I have heard I shouldn't say very often, but more often than I thought would be necessary, to be honest with you. This is really just an old wives' tale, in my opinion, that you'll likely hear from people that have really only sold 1 to 2 properties in their entire life, and they fit into and those 1 to 2 properties fit into a market that worked for that pricing strategy. Not This pricing strategy will not work in every single market. So when you hear this from people and they had success with it, it's likely due to the fact that the market was susceptible to this pricing strategy. In general, according to the National Associations of Realtors, homes that sit on the market for extended periods of time tend to receive lower offers, because buyers are going to assume that something is wrong with them. And I can wholeheartedly agree with this fact because we had a sale this winter time that, again, the market or the property was on the market for a very long time. And me as the agent, on the surface, there seemed to be absolutely nothing wrong with this property. The price seemed pretty fair, but I could not for the life of me figure out why it was still on the market. So I assumed that something was wrong. I assumed that something was going to be wrong on the inspection report. And then we get the inspection report back and there's absolutely nothing wrong. So again, that assumption is real. It's going to happen with buyers. And so when the properties are sitting on the market solely because they're priced too high, buyers are gonna start to assume that something is wrong, and that also leaks into your agents as well. Because again, if homes are priced properly, they're gonna get offers in the first couple of days, 100%, no doubt about it. So another part of that, the myth that gets a little bit messed up if you do go into contract on an inflated price is the appraisal can ruin the deal if it's overpriced. Even if a buyer agrees to that inflated price, if the buyer is using financing, the lender is going to require an appraisal. And if that property cannot appraise for the agreed inflated price, which it is likely not if it's inflated, you're going to have to go back for a renegotiation period. The buyer is going to have to bring that extra amount of money out of their pocket, or the deal is going to die at that point. And so if you agree to an inflated price, you still have to be wary of that appraisal and make sure that that is covered in the contract if that appraisal does not come in at the agreed upon price, because obviously the lender will not lend on a property if a appraisal is lower than what the agreed upon price is. A lender is just not going to give out an extra $20,000 based on a buyer saying that they will pay that. It's just not going to happen, unfortunately. So you as a buyer would be on the hook for that if that is specified in the contract. So again, like I mentioned earlier, the best offers are going to come early. If your price is or if your property is priced right, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with the property, the best offers are going to come in those first 3 days. Serious buyers often act quick. They want to get in the contract. They want to make sure that they have this property locked down, tied down. So if it's a good one, obviously, and if it's a bad one, then that is likely going to be the reason why it's sitting on the market. Or if it's priced too high, that's likely going to be the reason why it's sitting on the market. So the biggest way to avoid this is make sure that you're working with a real estate professional, number one. I think I see this a lot with FSBOs, for sale by owners. A lot of for sale by owners price their property a little bit too high. It sits on the market for a little bit, and at that point, they reach out to a real estate professional for a value opinion, and then the real estate professional is likely going to tell them to lower the price. And at that point, it usually goes into contract pretty quickly. But make sure you're working with a real estate professional when you're pricing your home, and make sure that they're using a comparable market analysis to determine a subject property's value. Make sure you're using recent comps in the area that are fitting the same parameters as your subject property, the same beds, the same baths, comparable square footage. If you have a garage, make sure those comps have a garage. So that is going to be how you avoid that overpricing your home, to leave room for negotiation. If you are pricing it correctly, you're going to get a really good offer to begin with, and there's usually not going to be much negotiation in that fact, if you're pricing it correctly. So it will likely lead you to getting a higher price than what you would if you priced it higher. Obviously, if you have a bidding war, if you're pricing it at a certain number, if you have multiple buyers putting offers in on this property, then you're going to likely get a higher price than what you listed it at. Versus if you listed it higher, get no offers, you have to lower it, and now you get a buyer that sees it's been on the market for 45 days and they offer even lower than what your list is, even after lowering it. So I always suggest to sellers to make sure that they're pricing their homes correctly, as it will lead to quicker sales and more than likely a higher price as well, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it does make sense. So
I love it. I love it. Yeah. I mean, I've fallen into that trap, not with selling a house, but I mean, with selling a car. I mean, you get on there, you get a little greedy. You're like, let me see what I can, put on here. I'll put OBO, or best offer just to see what I can get. And, some people just, depending on what you offer, man, they may not even consider it at all. Cause I mean, I think that could also send a sign of like, this person might be a little bit irrational. So do I even want to mess with this person? If this is what they're offering, or this is what they're asking, and this is how, depending on how inflated it is, could give an indication that whoever's selling that property may have the wrong expectations and be likely unwilling to negotiate. So I'm sure you don't want to send that message as a seller either of any item is, this person's a little delusional. So, and I know I've had my own instances of trying to sell cars and stuff and be like, yeah, I'm going to try and get somebody, maybe somebody will come along and, pay this amount for it. But, you let that stuff sit there for a while and no hits. And you wonder why. It's, likely because like who would want to, they don't probably want to mess with you at all. So
even negotiate on that
yeah,
aspect, you know what I mean? They don't even want to waste your time or waste their time trying to negotiate when you have an inflated value in your head of, X amount of dollars over what it actually is, or X amount of dollars what I think it is. I don't even see the value in negotiating if we're so far away. I'm not even going to bring you an offer to begin with. So, and that's
yeah,
obviously how deals get put together. Sometimes offers are brought and that's not necessarily what the seller's looking for, but at least the offer was brought and the communication lines were opened at that point. And so, maybe a deal can get got at the end of the road if an offer is made. But if an offer is not made in the first place, there's no open lines of communication, likely not going to get to the end point if you don't even have an offer to start with. So
yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, guys, those are 4 real estate myths. Hopefully we debunked those for you. Hopefully gave you some great information in there, and just some stuff to take away, some cool facts and whatnot. So um we thought that was important just because some of these things are often talked about, especially if you have not been in the home buying process before. It's common to feel like these things are real. Just as Zach mentioned, a client, asking about spring, and we have clients all the time or people all the time that we talk about and, think that 20% down is required and those sort of things. And so getting those things taken care of early on and figuring that out is important. So
absolutely couldn't agree more.
well, y'all, we appreciate everybody. This is going to be a wrap on this episode. So you guys will find this coming out on all of our podcast platforms. So we have obviously YouTube. You can watch the video version. We'll have it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and yeah, check us out on Instagram. Check us out on our YouTube, Facebook. We appreciate all the love and support you guys have been giving us so far, and excited to continue to bring you guys more and more value. So if there's anything that you guys want us to talk about, please feel free, drop it in the comments, either on YouTube, on Instagram, whatever the case may be. We're hoping to hear from you, and would love to bring you guys whatever it is you feel would be valuable for you. So
Absolutely. Have some fun things planned over the next couple of months. So super excited to just keep engaging with you guys, and looking forward to it for sure.
no doubt. Well, that'll be a wrap for us, guys. Appreciate you all listening. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.
Have a great one.